In 2008, MySpace was the most visited website in the US. It was a digital empire worth billions. And this is where we first built our online identities. It's where we curated our top 8, if you remember that. And it felt like we were part of the first true social media movement. But seemingly overnight, MySpace went from being the place to be online to total irrelevance. So what happened to Tom? And what happened to the platform that millennials grew up with? And in this video, I'm gonna break down the rise, the fall, and the lessons that we can all learn from MySpace's story. Oh, and there's one feature on MySpace that's surprisingly still alive today. And if you stick around to the end, I'm gonna show you what it is and why it still matters. Now, when MySpace launched in 2003, it wasn't just another website. For the first time ever, you really had your own little corner of the web. It was a piece of internet real estate that you could design, decorate, and show off to your friends and family. You could change your background, you could add glitter graphics, and you could write personal blogs, and you could even set your favorite song to autoplay the second someone visited your page. It was social media before anyone called it social media. And it gave people something they never had before. It gave them a way to express themselves online. And of course, there was Tom, right? Everyone's first friend. The white t-shirt and whiteboard photo, it became one of the most iconic images of the early internet. Now, Tom Anderson wasn't just a founder. To millions of people, he was the face of the brand new digital world. Now, in 2005, MySpace was growing faster than anyone could have imagined. By 2008, it was an empire. 115 million people logged into it every single month. It had $800 million in annual revenue, an valuation that at its peak hit $12 billion. Now, for this moment in time, MySpace wasn't just a platform. It was a cultural hub of the internet. It was a place where music careers were launched, friendships were built and nurtured, and an entire generation learned what it meant to have an online identity. Now, for a while, it felt like MySpace could do no wrong. But beneath the surface, cracks were already forming. In July 2005, MySpace was sold to Rupert Murdoch and News Corp for $580 million, a massive deal at the time. And at first, it seemed like a win. MySpace was still at its peak. The site now had big money, and it had a big backing to keep growing. But the sale changed the company's priorities. Innovation slowed, and the focus shifted to monetization over user experience. Pages became flooded with banner ads, pop-ups, and corporate promotions. And the site felt a little less like your personal corner of the internet and more like a digital billboard. Meanwhile, Facebook was coming up fast. It was clean, it had a minimalistic layout, and much faster loading times, which made it feel a lot more modern and professional. Now, by mid-2009, Facebook had already overtook MySpace in US unique visitors, and users started jumping ship in droves. And then came the mobile revolution. People started moving their online lives to smartphones now. And MySpace wasn't ready for this. It was cluttered, it was ad-heavy, and the design really didn't work on the smaller screens. So while Facebook optimized its platform quickly for iPhone and Android users, MySpace was left behind. And even that thing that once made MySpace feel special, the full personalization, it started to backfire. Overloaded profiles with the custom music, with the graphics and the autoplay videos. It made pages painfully slow to load. So it went from being fun to visit somebody's profile, as people's expectation for internet speed started increasing, this now became a frustrating experience. And by the late 2000s, the magic that had once made MySpace the center of the digital universe, it was slipping away. And the platform, which was once one of a kind, it started to feel like an old clunky car. In early 2011, MySpace lost 44% of its monthly US visitors in just one single quarter. It dropped its monthly users to 37.7 million. So what had once been the largest social network in the world was now a digital ghost town, right? And that collapse triggered massive layoffs and a string of desperate attempts to rebrand and reinvent itself. And in that same year, News Corp waved the white flag. It finally sold MySpace for just $35 million, a mere fraction of the $580 million they had paid just a few years prior. But even under this new ownership, under specific media and investor Justin Timberlake, the platform couldn't regain momentum. Multiple redesigns alienated the remaining loyal users, and the platform's identity became muddled, right? Was it a social network? Was it a music platform? A news hub? And in trying to be everything, MySpace essentially became nothing. And then came one of its final blows. In 2019, during a bot server migration, MySpace lost nearly 12 years of user data. That means billions of songs, photos, blogs, and messages. Entire teenage soundtracks, early creative projects, and internet history were wiped out in an instant. So for millions of users, it felt like their digital adolescence had been erased. But the truth is, by this point, the world had already moved on. The rise of smartphones made speed and simplicity the new expectation. And MySpace's ad-heavy, cluttered design, it really just didn't translate to mobile screens. Meanwhile, platforms like Facebook, Instagram, later Snapchat, Twitter, they embraced a cleaner, faster experience. And then there was one more major factor that doesn't get talked about enough. And that was the psychology of social proof, something that MySpace never cracked. On MySpace, you of course had your top 8, but there was no universal signal of status or validation. And then Facebook introduced the like button, and this changed everything. That tiny blue thumbs up, it rewired social media forever. Because suddenly users weren't just sharing for fun, they were sharing for feedback, right? Every like, every comment, every new follower, it became a dopamine hit. It was a micro validation that kept people coming back. And platforms that tapped into this thrived. And other platforms like MySpace that didn't were left behind. Now, say what you want about that, as controversial as it may sound, this was all rooted in human psychology. And the companies that are still around today, they were able to adapt to this. Now, by 2019, MySpace technically still existed, and it still does today, but it only had about 7 million monthly users, right? So it was no longer really a social network. It just became a quiet, music-focused website. Now, the fall of MySpace wasn't caused by just one single mistake. It was death by 1,000 paper cuts. Slow innovation, an obsession with monetization way too quickly, failure to adapt to mobile, and a cultural shift that craved validation and simplicity over personalization and chaos. Right? And in the end, MySpace didn't just lose users, it lost relevance. Now, remember that one MySpace feature that I teased at the beginning? Well, it's MySpace Music, and believe it or not, it's still around to this day. Of course, it's no longer a social network, but in a reduced form, MySpace has still survived as a curated music and cultural hub. Independent artists still go on there to show their work, and there's a quiet community that checks in for throwback playlists, indie releases, and cultural content. Now, 2 quick lessons on this before I let you go. Now, you either adapt or you die, especially with mobile. When smartphones exploded, platforms that embraced that mobile-first design, like Facebook and Instagram did, they thrived. And MySpace didn't, right? And the shift to mobile, it left them looking like an old toy that nobody wanted to play with anymore. Lesson number 2 is that user experience is always going to beat short-term revenue. Flooding pages with ads, boosting revenue in the short run, seems like a win, right? But when you slowly decrease and negatively impact user experience, eventually that's going to catch up to you. And Facebook did the exact opposite. They perfected the product and then they monetized, and that patience paid off. And of course, one last lesson I'll just throw in here for good measure. The like button changed everything, right? Humans are wired to seek validation and status, and platforms that build around those triggers, they created addictive ecosystems, and MySpace never matched that. So again, say what you want about that, but it's just the nature of the world that we live in. Thanks for watching. What's your memory of MySpace? I want to hear about it. Do you remember your old custom profile? Do you remember using it for music? What about top 8? Do you think top 8 would still thrive in 2025? And if you want more stories like this about rise and fall, reinvention, don't forget to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one.